Dr. Birol, very nice to see you, sir. Very welcome. And this is perfect. I just want to welcome everybody onto this call and thank them for joining us to discuss the role of sustainable hydropower in the economic recovery. Dr. Birol, as you all know, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. My name's Eddie Rich. I am the CEO of the International Hydropower Association, and I am joined by by President Roger Gill and 10 CEOs and top executives from our membership. As I said, on the logistical side, if I can start there, just I'll ask Dr. Birol if you don't mind to keep your camera on during the whole conversation, and for the rest of us, I will ask us now to turn our cameras off unless you are speaking, or and if you can be muted as well, unless you're speaking. And we can use the chat box for any simple comments or questions. And as I said, as a reminder, we are recording this with the intention of publishing the broadcast on Tuesday. So if you have any objections, please let us know by close on Monday, or any things that you want to be edited. Right, with the logistics out of the way, if I may, just to start on the topic of the day, we're here, of course, to talk about COVID-19, and in addition to the tragic health implications of that, the pandemic has obviously transformed the energy sector in the space of just a few short months. Dr. Birol, your team, I think, have done an amazing job in shedding light on these developments, and I think we've all benefited from the reports and briefings that you've produced, and that in these uncertain times. Going forward, of course, we're facing twin challenges. On one hand, we've got the near-term crisis of employment and recession, and on the other hand remains that long-term challenge of threat of climate change. So, learning from the past, it's going to need to be strong green stimulus packages as the government recovers, provides recovery. And we hope that we can look at how they focus on low carbon technologies and infrastructure such as hydropower. Next week, Dr. Birol, if I understand correctly, you're publishing a special report on the World Energy Outlook, which will set out how governments can best reduce emissions whilst also bolstering the economy and jobs. So today, I think, is a very, very timely opportunity for us in the hydropower sector to outline the key measures needed to spur sustainable hydropower and support the recovery. So to start the discussion, if I may, Dr. Birol, I'll turn to you and perhaps highlight, if you can highlight some of the implications of COVID on the sector and what you might be covering in the special report. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Rich, and many thanks to all the business leaders, the CEOs of hydropower industry. This is a great pleasure. Now, first of all, we all know that as a result of COVID-19, our economy, our social life has gotten a major hit. We had all difficult times. Some of us are still having difficult times around the world. And in these difficult times, I believe, and I said it in the beginning of this COVID, we all understood how essential electricity is for the human beings, more than ever, in terms of our communication, in terms of education, in terms of the health systems, hospitals, and others. How important it is, the electricity, and undisrupted electricity systems. And I would like to thank all the utilities, not only the you business leaders, but your engineers, your workers, providing uninterrupted electricity to the citizens around the world. Now, as International Energy Agency, from the day one, we followed, analyzed, and briefed the world on the impacts. So we are doing two things. One, the damage assessment of coronavirus on the energy sector. What happened? What is happening in the energy sector? This is number one. Number two, how do we get out of this crisis as the energy world in a more resilient and in a more cleaner way? These are the two areas that we are focusing. First of all, I would like to tell you our view about the damage assessment. What is happening in the energy sector? The global energy demand this year, we expect, will decline the most since Second World War. There is a big decline. Almost all the fuels are declining, except for renewables, by the way. Biggest decline being in oil. Not only economic meltdown pushed the oil demand downwards, but the confinement being the lockdown at homes and less ability to take cars, take buses, and others affected the oil demand. Biggest hit. But gas declining, coal declining, slight decline in nuclear, and renewables use increased slightly, mainly as a result of the government guarantees and the cost structure. This is under use, and we also see that this year we expect there is a big drop in the carbon dioxide emissions causing climate change, huge decline, and the decline this year we expect is going to erase or delete the increase in the last 10 years in the world. So this year's decline will compensate the increase in the global CO2 emissions in the last 10 years. Big, big, big decline. But in my view, this is not something to be happy about, because this decline is not happening as a result of the right energy policies, but it is happening because premature deaths around the world, economic meltdown, and other reasons. So we have to be very conscious about this fact that this is not driven, this decline, as a result of right energy policies. We also look at in terms of our damage assessment. In that context, we also look at the investments in the energy sector. We expect this year global energy investments, oil, gas, solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, all of them, coal, when you look at the entire energy chain, will decline this year about 20% compared to 2019, which means a decline of $400 billion decline. Investments everywhere are declining, including solar and wind, except for hydropower. We expect this year, 2020 and 2021, there are some increase in the new hydropower installations, mainly coming from Asia and focusing on China and others. Hydropower in these days were extremely helpful in terms of generating electricity in an uninterrupted way, but also provide the much needed flexibility in order to accommodate the fluctuations in the share of the variable renewables, solar and wind. And this was definitely a major contribution of hydropower to electricity security, but at the same time, clean energy transitions. Now, we see, when we look at today, we see hydropower is also facing significant challenges. What are those challenges? First of all, lower electricity prices in many parts of the world, mainly as a result of lower demand and the low natural gas prices. And this is, of course, another challenge. And when we look at all the economy, the decreasing ability of mobilizing financement is another challenge. So this is where we are today. Mr. Rich mentioned the IEA's special report. Now, this is of critical importance. Many governments around the world asked the IEA to help them to build right stimulus packages, sustainable recovery economy packages. We were the first one, IEA was the first one who said 3 months ago, clean energy should be at the heart of the recovery packages. We are well aware we are not living in a different planet. We are well aware that the biggest challenge today we are facing is the employment challenge, economic growth challenge. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the recovery packages, stimulus packages, which are aimed at creating jobs, boosting the economy, also helps to build an energy future which is much more modern, cleaner, and secure. Today, trillions of dollars of recovery packages are in preparation. What kind of energy policies and which parts of the energy sector will get the attention of the governments will have long-lasting implications for our energy world for many years to come. And it is the reason we made a report which we call Sustainable Recovery Plan of the IEA, which we are going to release to international press on Thursday in consultation with the many governments, in collaboration with the International Monetary Fund, and we will come up with some suggestions which parts of the energy sector should get support from governments. Here, I can tell you that we have a strong emphasis on hydropower, including the modernization, refurbishment of the existing hydropower to generate electricity, but also provide flexibility. Our numbers show that the one-third of the hydropower fleet around the world is more than 40 years old and needs refurbishment, and it is one of the areas that we are putting emphasis on. If the CEOs have suggestions for us to include in the report from hydropower, I will be very happy to take them on board. Last 2 points from me. On 9th of July, 9th of July, next month, this year, International Energy Agency is holding a Clean Energy Transitions Summit. This is the biggest energy and climate meeting this year happening. We have some 30 governments represented at minister and higher levels, accounting about 80% of global GDP. Ministers from Brazil, China, Europe, Indonesia, UK, US, India, around the world to discuss clean energy transitions and what needs to be done. And also many business leaders as well. And here, I can assure you that the hydropower will get an important emphasis by the International Energy Agency, and I hope by the ministers of these important countries around the world. Some of you may remember, let me finish with these words, that last year in Paris, in the International Hydropower Annual Conference, I said that the voice of hydropower is not heard enough or enough loud compared to the service that the hydropower is providing. We hear a lot of voice of solar, which is very good, no question. We hear a lot of voice of wind and others. It's all very good. I don't have any problem with that. But hydropower, its voice is not heard as strongly as it should be. And here's the reason I said we are very happy to make sure that the voice of hydropower is heard as strongly as it deserves. And it is one of the reasons why I want to put emphasis of hydropower in our 9th of July Leaders Summit on clean energy transitions, as well as in the IEA work. And I am very much looking forward to work with you together and with your companies. And if you have any questions, comments for me, for my agency to include in our special report, to be voiced in our Clean Energy Transition Summit on 9th of July or other work, I will be very happy to take note, as well as my colleagues listening to this conversation very carefully. Thank you very much once again for your invitation to the International Energy Agency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Birol. Very inspiring. 3 very quick reactions, if I may. First of all, my board has very clearly told me and my team that our job is to raise the voice of international sustainable hydropower. So we take up the challenge from the board and from you to do that. Secondly, we're looking forward to the report next Thursday. Thank you so much for highlighting hydropower on that. As background, we have actually done with 2 of the international banks a study of modernization opportunities in Asia and in Latin America and the Caribbean, and would be keen to speak with your team about including some opportunities in those 2 places. And thirdly, please let us know any way that we can help on the Clean Energy Transition Summit next month. We're very keen to make sure that that is well informed on hydropower. Thank you for that. I'm going to now, with your permission, turn to our members to give a quick indication on the key measures to support hydropower's role in the recovery. We are, of course, very time constrained, so I'm going to be very hard on people. If you're approaching the 2 minutes, I will turn my camera on, and please do take that as an indication to wind up. So sorry to be so rude, but we will need to keep to the 45 minutes, and we're halfway through already. Dr. Birol, you started mentioning that hydropower investments are not going to decline this year because of investments in China, so it seems right to start with China. May I turn to Mr. Wu, General Manager for Yalong River Hydropower. Mr. Wu.
Yes.
Please come in for your comments.
Okay, Dr. Birol, all the friends, and Yalong Hydro is a clean energy supplier focusing on hydropower. We are engaged in development of the entire Yalong River of 22 cascades, and currently we have 5 hydro stations in operation with a capacity of 14.7 gigawatts and 2 projects under construction, totaling 4.5 gigawatts. And a couple of more to be commenced in a couple of years. I'd just like to make 3 brief points with the situation in China, especially in our company. First, impact of COVID-19 on hydropower is moderate here. To confront COVID-19, China took the most rigid measures, including travel restriction, gathering bans, self-quarantine. So the hydropower industry has inevitably been impacted, and the construction projects were at very low productivities during the first 3 months of the year. But due to the effectiveness of the measures, the disease was brought under control in a reasonably short period of time, and the construction had resumed since April. For the power stations in operation, the impact mainly came from the reduced load demand. Second point, hydropower industry has played an important role. As an important component of energy, hydropower has played a significant role in the fight against the crisis. As hydropower is normally located in remote area, it is easier to avoid gathering of people and is therefore less vulnerable. Maintaining of the productivity of the running power stations has provided stable energy supply for recovery of the economy. And our company's power production in the first 5 months of the year is 25.2 terawatt-hour, which gave a strong assurance to industrial productions and people's daily life.
Mr. Wu, I think I'm so sorry, but I think we'll need to wind up at this point. Any final points?
Point 3. Okay, point 3, the increased hydropower investment will give robust support to economic revival. And it is expected that a new project will start to construct in our company in the second half of the year. And the investment could be more than $20 billion. I think which can help a lot with the GDP, employment and infrastructures in the poverty regions. So I think also for other projects, other part of the world, there is a need for increased investment in hydropower to cope with the crisis. So I also wish Mr. Birol can take every chance to help us to make a stronger voice for hydropower in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Thank you, very powerful. If we can move on immediately. I'm sorry, I'm going to be tough on time. We have apologies at the last minute, just 10 minutes before the beginning of the meeting, from Pascal Radu, the CEO of GE Renewables, for a personal family issue. So let me pass on to Yves Giraud, the CEO of EDF Hydro. Thank you.
Okay. Once again, thank you, Dr. Birol, for what you are doing. I would just like to emphasize one message about hydro. That will be the message concerning storage. And in my opinion, that could be in a recovery package. I mean, hydro with PSP pumped storage, hydropower plant. Hydro with PSP is today the best way and the only way to store energy with large quantities and over long periods, such as a week without wind. And so it allows the integration of intermittent renewable energy. These PSP are developing all over the world. EDF had just commissioned one PSP, the first one in Israel with GE for Operate and Vesta, and has started works on a PSP near Dubai. There is a huge potential in the world. Hundreds of gigawatts are technically feasible. The solution has been proved for many years, but we have, in my opinion, two major problems with PSP. The first one is that they are not well known, as you said before. Every time a journalist talks about storage, he talks about batteries and just forget hydro solutions. And I often say that hydro is a kind of sleeping beauty. You see what I mean? And the second problem is that very often we do not have the appropriate market design. There is no ad hoc mechanism to support storage in general and PSP in particular. For instance, in Europe, PSP are not eligible for support under the guidelines of on state aids for renewable energy and the environment. So, in my opinion, and I would end at this point, in my opinion, it would be very important for us that you report on renewable and your communication in this summit stresses the absolute need for flexibility and storage, and stresses this kind of hydro solution. Thank you, Dr. Birol.
Very much.
Thank you, Mr. Giraud. May I turn now to Mr. Stephen Davey, CEO of Hydro Tasmania in Australia. Thank you.
Can you see me?
See you.
Hi, Eddie, Roger. Thank you very much for putting this on, and Dr. Birol, very good to hear your comments. One of my people is working closely with your organisation, Alex Beckett, working with Paolo. So we're pleased to make this contact and pleased to be part of this evening's or today's event. I can only echo the previous comments that's what's missing in this discussion as we move to much higher solar and wind penetration is the role of storage, firming and security services to keep the grid reliable and secure. And it's definitely hydropower can do almost everything that the grid is going to need with more solar and wind in it. And in conjunction with battery investment, pumped hydro investment, I think is the easiest and most straightforward way to deal with the issues that come with the solar and wind coming into the system, and in Australia at least, the coal-fired generation closing. So I would echo that the need to highlight the role that hydro can play is important, and that we're working in Australia on the measures to design the market properly so that signals for storage, signals for capacity, signals for security services can be part of the market design. And I think the third element is that unlike solar, and to a lesser extent wind, and unlike batteries, pumped hydro has quite a long lead time. So you need to be planning for large-scale pumped hydro to go quite a long way out. What we have found in Australia is that the push towards more renewable energy, combined with the slight slowdown in demand that we're seeing with the COVID economic slowdown, is really accentuating the need for methodologies to deal with the stresses that the system is feeling at the moment as coal is getting backed off by wind and solar, and this talk of gas playing a big transition role, but I think it's really a stopgap measure until there's enough storage in the system. So I would emphasize the need to drive hydro refurbishment, as you've already stated, and the need to drive the role of storage, and in particular pumped hydro storage, in future energy markets.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. We got. I'm very conscious we've got 10 minutes left, and we've got a few people who we want to hear from. Can I turn to Anton Louis Olivier from REH Group in South Africa? Anton.
Yes, I'm pleased to be Africa's lone voice at this point here. But I think what is important to note is that Africa has still got the largest untapped hydro resource potential globally, which puts it in a bit of a different position from the rest of the world, in the sense that there's still significant scope for greenfield hydro development in Africa. And I think with the growing emphasis and prevalence of solar PV and lower cost but intermittent resources, we should not neglect the need for hydro to create the base for which on which these lower cost technologies can also enter into the market. At the same time, like you mentioned, there is an existing hydro fleet which is old, which requires refurbishment. A lot of these plants are not running at the full capacity, and I do not need to state for anybody the suppressed demand and the need in Africa for increased power capacity for commercial, industrial, as well as household services. So my message to the IEA in dealing specifically with the international financial sector and the multilaterals who are guiding the future of the energy sector in Africa is to remember that hydro, large and small, can still play a significant role in the continent, and to create a platform on which the lower cost but intermittent other renewables can also contribute to a growing and decarbonized power sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton Louis, and thanks for keeping to time. Let me turn over to Hilda Bakken, the Executive Vice President, Global Operations at Statkraft. Hilda.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a bit picture here. Thanks to all for putting up this session, and a lot of good things said here. In the sake of time, just a few words about Statkraft and how we see this. And as you probably know, Statkraft is a big global hydropower player, and we have 25% of the storage capacity in Europe, which is really huge. For us, it is important that we need to focus on not reducing the existing capacity of the hydro fleet as such, and our ability to store water and to dispatch this when it's needed is really something we have to work harder on in the future as such. And for us, it is of course important to also focus on the refurbishment part of the activities as such, and and make sure that the framework conditions for all this is implemented in a good way, because hydropower is really a highly financially intensive industry as such. So stable framework conditions over time is really crucial for this industry, I think. So that's really what I expect the IEA to also support from our side, keeping reservoir capacity, long-term framework support as such for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilde, and again, thanks for keeping to time. Dr. Birol, do you want to come in at this point, or do you want us to continue on?
Please continue. It's very helpful. I am listening to comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Birol. Okay, so let me turn to one of our board members, Irina Cañas, CEO at ISA in Costa Rica.
Hi. Well, I believe that every continent, every region, and also every country, we are facing at some place similar challenges, but in other different challenges. And related with electricity, in the case of Costa Rica, we've been generating more than 99% with renewables, but COVID-19 arrived during dry season, and we've been keeping telling the people to wash their hands, and we didn't have enough water for all the regions in Costa Rica. So the people were facing lack of water, and the water company started asking us to provide them with more flow for human consumption in our reservoirs. And I believe that we have to think on multi-purpose reservoirs and hydro plants in the future in some regions, more than we've been thinking in the last years. It was a very difficult challenge, because our dry season was this year worse than the last few years. And we really needed at some point to sacrifice generation with our hydro plants to provide water in some places. So I believe that the recovery after COVID-19, we should be sure to do it in a sustainable way, but thinking not just in electricity, but also in water. I think those two needs are very important in the world right now. We are going to have COVID-19 for I don't know how many months, and we are going to keep telling the people to wash their hands and to be more careful. And it's a really important thing that we should provide with two main necessities as electricity and water. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. And I should perhaps just add, Dr. Birol, that our next World Hydropower Congress will be co-hosted by ISA in Costa Rica in 2021. And we will extend an invitation, of course, to you. Let me pass over to Aurora Arneson from Landsbygden.
Yes, thank you, Eddie, and your team at the IEA to organize this session. Firstly, I can say that I can agree to, I think, everything my colleagues have said, and I will try to not repeat all of it. But I think it's very important for us in the hydropower industry to find the strong support from IEA that we hear in Dr. Birol's talk. I think that is extremely important for us, as many parts of the world kind of underestimate how important hydropower is and how good a resource that is. I fully agree that the renewable energy has to be kind of the key for the recovery after COVID-19, and I think we have a lot of opportunities there, because I think the world is ready to change fast now. We have seen after crisis like this, I think that's very, we will see accelerated development. I think one of the main concerns that I see is that is the low cost we are facing with electricity around the world. It will be very difficult to finance hydropower projects. We have several good projects which we have difficulty to justify because of the low prices we see. And we see that sustainable hydropower projects, we are competing with wind and solar, for example, with green subsidies, which is whereas we don't see any subsidies today in the hydro, and at the same time we have the extremely low cost of fossil fuels, which is running down the prices. So I think it's important to find ways of getting kind of the right market conditions, long-term market condition to support future hydro development, and also to find ways of how do we get remunerated for the flexibility and the important services that the hydropower is doing. I think I don't need to spend more time, but again, thank you, Dr. Birol, for your strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for keeping to time. I recognise that we've hit the time barrier, but if we may ask you, Dr. Birol, for another 5-10 minutes of your time, I'd like to turn to Mr. James Ung, the CEO of SEB Power in Sarawak, Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, for inviting. Coming from Malaysia, the developing country at Southeast Asia, so I think I'll echo that hydropower, we need a louder sound, and we hope the IEA and probably with IEA, can form the authoritative international voice in supporting hydropower sustainable development and helping in setting up national policies or national energy policies so that we have tax incentive, green bonds, fast track approval by the authorities and permits, and also potentially we look at the internationalize the renewable energy certificates initiative. And I think from Sarawak Energy perspective, we are looking actively into the carbon-free hydrogen, the production of hydrogen from large hydro, and this will help us in driving our rural electrification using hydrogen for fuel cells technologies. I think that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thanks for keeping to time. Look, Dr. Birol, I'm very conscious you need to get going. Is it okay to ask a couple of other interventions, or do you need to take the floor now?
Just two more interventions.
Thank you so much. Okay, can I turn to Herbie Johnson, General Manager of Southern Company in the US? Herbie.
Yes, thank you, and I'll echo. At Southern, we have a goal of neutral carbon emissions, and hydro is an important part of that. We reconfirmed by ensuring our continued $10 billion reinvestment in our existing hydro. We're going to work hard for levelized economic strategies compared to pump storage and batteries. I, as a board member of IHA, will work with Eddie and his team around modernization. If you look at our plants, used to it took 20 people to run these plants. Now it takes 40. During a pandemic, we've now half that. This technology of hydro has proven you can run it during a pandemic situation. So when you look through the lens of future modernization, how do we pandemic proof our hydro plants through proper modernization, where people can maintain equipment with a social distance, where you minimize the impacts, both maintenance of the plant and through your dam safety observations. We need to pandemic, and I think Eddie and his team, what they do in modernization are going to be critical as part of that. It'll help all of our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Herbie. And just to finish with Gilles Marignal from Engie, Brazil, Chief of Strategy Communications and CSR. So, thank you, Gilles.
Engie is the largest power producer in Brazil, mainly based on hydro. And this is the country where we have our center of expertise investments in hydropower. A good measure done by the Brazilian government was the declaration of standstill of the financing and debt service payment for projects being done federal bank, BNDES, for up to 6 months. This is a very nice for the hydropower industry, and could be followed by countries who have not done this yet. Second point, Brazil is not building any megawatt in hydropower at present time, and there are very few projects being prepared. By preparation, I mean the preparation of the basic engineering design and the environmental studies to get the licensing. And this takes between 2 and 3 years. Brazil should quickly, urgently resume the preparation of projects to be offered for concession for investors. This will take some time, and this is urgent. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Birol, you asked to hear the voice of hydropower more loudly. These are messages we're taking to you and to the wider world. Let me give you the floor to respond. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We are a few minutes beyond our schedules. I just wanted to tell you that, first of all, this discussion heartened me that our thinking and the thinking of the industry, the hydropower industry, is very much aligned. If I should take a few key points, keywords. One, recognition of the storage. This is extremely important and not well understood. So we will definitely work on that. Second, I mentioned in my introductory remarks, but also many of you mentioned the necessity, economic, environmental, and security necessity of modernization of the existing plants, very important. Third, keep the long-term political support. Another important point I wanted to highlight. Another service which is not very well recognized, in addition to storage, in addition to base load electricity, is the multiple benefits of hydropower in terms of availability of water. This is we are going to definitely look into that, and you can be sure that as International Energy Agency, what I promised yourselves in the previous World Hydropower Association conference, we will be your voice at international level. Not necessarily we have any special ties with the hydropower industry or the technology, because we think this is a very important technology, very important option, provide baseload electricity, long-term benefits beyond energy, reduce the emissions, and also makes the life of the variable renewables easier in terms of accommodating them. So we are going to take all these suggestions once again into consideration in our special report that we have put together with the IMF, going to be released on Thursday. And it will be one of the topics that we are going to discuss with all the ministers and the business leaders around the world on 9th of July, IEA Clean Energy Transition Summit. Thank you very much to all of you, Mr. Ricci, and all the business leaders, and looking forward to work with you. Thank you to all of you from Paris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. Please, I understand you need to leave, and so thank you for your time, and it's much appreciated. For those who are able to stay, if I can just give a couple of minutes to our chair, Roger Gill. I don't think we can hear you, Roger. Well, in place of Roger, perhaps I can say particularly to Dr. Birol and all the team at IEA, thanks so much for the opportunity today. There are very strong messages coming through from yourselves on the need to emphasize storage capacity of hydropower, the special role it plays amongst the renewables, its ability to bridge the renewables and storage communities. The emphasis that you give to modernization as more shovel-ready projects to go as part of the economic stimulus, and some of those long-term economic planning and the role of hydropower into that. I want to thank all the CEOs and senior executives for their participation today, and we certainly had taken the challenge to speak up, to have our voice more widely heard. Over the coming weeks, IEA will continue to offer our assistance, press home the message that the role of sustainable hydropower is there to support the recovery, to boost jobs, and to help build a low carbon resilient economies. With that, thank you so much, everybody, for your time today, and we hope to speak soon. And we look forward to the IEA report next week.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.